In the battle for the 1 seed, the Nuggets come out on top. Peyton Watson swats everything in sight, and Denver looks like it's the 1 seed. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us every day, being an everydayer, hanging out with us Monday through Friday. We do appreciate you guys joining us, whether you're on Apple Podcasts, 5-star reviews would be awesome, or Spotify, or if you're catching us on YouTube, you can go to youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets. Hit the subscribe button. Helps us out so much. I've gotten a lot of comments lately from just random folks. I've ran into people here in Loveland. I've ran into people at the arena. Tell me how much they love this show. Really appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for making us part of your lives. Glad to be with you here on a Wednesday, which is a big day because the Denver Nuggets got a monster win over the Minnesota Timberwolves on Wednesday night in a fantastic game. It was so good and such a big game that we decided to go ahead and do a 3-man here on Locked On Nuggets.
I like this. Pedro says it's like a finale oop here, the trio. So who's flying through the air to dunk it? Matt, is that you?
I want to be AG. I want to be AG.
You're just like him, honestly.
That's my goal. He and I had a good chat last night. It was good. Awesome. Today's show, by the way, is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. His name is Adam Mares. He's director of content for DNVR. His name is SwipeAcam. You can catch him on YouTube at youtube.com/SwipeAcam after every single Nuggets game. He's on BR. He is on Mile High's Pickaxe and Roll podcast. He is everywhere. Check him out. Appreciate you guys being with us as we get started here on Locked On Nuggets. All right, let's hit it. Voltron show. Love that reference. That's a great reference.
Me too. I love that one.
Do you know what Voltron? Do you don't not a big Voltron guy when you were a kid? No.
He had his prime, but it's gone.
It's a they. They're a collective. And much like Voltron, the Nuggets formed their fully operational version in a win over the Minnesota Timberwolves on Wednesday night. They get the win 116-107 in a game where they trailed for much of the game, got a lead in the fourth quarter, and then absolutely went to work in the fourth, eventually rolling away. And absolutely, it wasn't maybe a blowout, but it felt like it by the end of that game. Nikola Jokic against the number one defense and the very likely multi-time DPOY, the favorite to win DPOY. Jokic goes 41 points on 16 of 20. He goes 2 of 2 from 3, 7 of 12 from the line, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, and a +6 and a monster win. There's a lot to get to here. Let's start with this, Adam. What did this game show you about Denver? What did you enjoy most about this game?
Here's what it showed you was that the Nuggets, including Jokic, have another gear that, as great as Jokic has been, the likely MVP, what we were seeing was the B version of Jokic, and you forget it. You forget until you see the A version, and you're like, oh, that's right. He can be aggressive even against the best defenses. But what I like the most, and I texted you this last night, Matt, I was so sad. It was probably too late. You might have already been in bed because it was super late, but I texted this to you, and I thought it was right up your alley. Swipa, imagine Anthony Davis last night sitting at home on his couch, watching this game, and just watching Rudy Gobert get absolutely cooked, humiliated even. Because that was not just a regular, I'm beating this dude. That was a spanking. That was a humiliating dominance from Jokic over Rudy Gobert. Imagine what Anthony Davis is thinking. They're going, best case scenario, we're the 8th seed, and I got to play this guy 4 or 5 times, get laughed at every game, and then everybody blame me. I was tickled driving home last night thinking about Anthony Davis watching this one.
Yeah, I think that obviously the Lakers, if their best case scenario, they make the playoffs. I think that's a gargantuan task to get into, where you have to get into the first round series versus the team you haven't beaten since December 2022. So that's a lot to get into. But I think yesterday, man, I love what you said, Adam. I think there are some games. I think this game, all Lakers games, all 4 of them, the 2 Boston games, where the Nuggets they don't They're not settling at all. They come in with a mission. They come in with a plan. They come in with an identity. And yesterday they executed. In the first half, Jamal Murray, this is the most voracious defense he's seen since he came back in the last 3 games. And you could tell he had to adjust a little bit. He was getting caught in the air a little bit on some of his passes. He had 4 turnovers, I think, in the first half. But by the time the second half, it was 52-49. By the time the second half started, Jamal Murray started rolling. And Jokic was rolling. And you just felt like this cascading imminent presence coming from the Denver Nuggets, that they're just this inevitable sustaining force that you just cannot duplicate around the NBA. And I think as good as the Wolves are, they have dealt some of the best defensive performances of the season this year in some individual games. They had nothing yesterday and literally got to the point. They were so dominant, Matt, in the fourth quarter. The Nuggets, for the large part of the fourth quarter, didn't take a 3-pointer. Because they were absolutely just generating so many wide open looks around the rim. They were getting into the mid-range shot. The transition, it was amazing yesterday. And Jokic, this is probably one of the most efficient, dominant versus an elite level player game I've ever seen. He had an 81% true shooting yesterday, 16 of 20 from the field, 2 of 2 from 3. And by the way, Adam, I know you're key on this. Last 4 games, Joker shooting around 50% from 3. Like he's getting back into his playoff form. His free throw rate is going down in terms of him making his free throws, and then his 3-pointers are going up. That's how you know we're getting into playoff moments here. He shot 79% from the free throw line in the playoff last year. I just think, man, it was just such a seminal moment that the Nuggets are reminding the rest of the league that as good as you've gotten, as hard as you've worked, as good as you've been in this regular season, there's a level that we're able to get to that you're not just going to be able to match for 4 quarters. And Anthony Edwards yesterday, 25 points through the first 3 quarters, didn't do anything inside the fourth. Their defense was absolutely silencing yesterday as well. And obviously, Jokic is spearheading that. Again, we're just witnessing one of the greatest 4-year peaks we've ever seen in NBA history.
Both great takes. Mine was, it was a really interesting night. This felt like a very big game, and I love dissecting everything. Like they brought Gobert up higher in pick and roll. The Nuggets did a lot of pre-switching to try and coordinate things. They used AG at the 5 from the very get-go. I want to talk about AG later. All these tactical things. But after the game, hearing the way that the Nuggets in the locker room talk about Nikola, I asked Nikola about that after the game. And then here's the other thing, though. The third quarter, when they're making that run, I'm looking at Jokic, and I've been watching the man for a while now. And I know when he's gassed, and he was so tired. I could see how tired he was. But this is the thing. Both teams on a back-to-back, big stakes, high-intensity game, physicality. There is, beyond all the X's and O's, beyond all of the skill sets, beyond all of the spacing, there is something else with this team that binds it together and gives it a separation. And it is a determination that is set by Nikola, where he is not going to be the first one to fall. He's not going to be the one who tires out first. And that determination, that's that relentlessness. I think I've started to kind of recognize is that he'll figure things out and get better. And that's the mind side and the tactical. But his willpower is unbelievable. And it carries through the rest of this team. And it's why AG played in this game, despite being as banged up as he is. It's why Jamal Murray played in this game on a back-to-back after travel. It's why he played. It's why everyone went so hard in this game, is that they are following what Jokic sets for them. And that determination is something you need. All the talent, you need all the skill, you need the efficiency, you need the vision and the control of the game and all of these things. But it really has to be, it is so important for people to understand that a big reason they won this game was that the Nuggets were we will go blow for blow with you, haymaker for haymaker, and you can lead through 3 quarters and we will be the last one standing. You are not going to be the last one standing. You're going to have to outpace us the entire time. We're never dropping. And that to me is such a mark of what's incredible about this team, what's incredible about Nikola Jokic. And Jokic kind of said this, they're all fighters, and that's why we won the title last year.
Love it, man. So good. I think it's true. One note, though, I want to throw the Timberwolves a bone here and just say I thought they were actually really good in this game. The game got away from them. Denver outplayed them. I never seized this game. Kyle Anderson gets 3 quick fouls, and I think that changed, because they're short Karl-Anthony Towns, it changed how they could guard. They were hoping they could steal minutes playing small. It's the second time this year that he's gotten in foul trouble, like instantly trying to guard Yoke. I think they can go to the drawing board and cross that one off, say that's not an option if we play this team in the playoffs. But they will have Karl-Anthony Towns. And I think when you talk about how do you beat Denver in a playoff series, the non-Jokic minutes, can you bludgeon them? Really, the bench minutes in general, can you bludgeon them with something? And last night, they were not able to do that.
Nope.
Naz Reid had an off night, especially in those minutes where they needed him. I think Karl-Anthony Towns, if he's available, makes it harder for Peyton Watson and Christian Brown to have as good of a game as they had last night because it's a different matchup. Those guys are perimeter defenders. Karl-Anthony Towns can use his size. So to throw Minnesota a bone, there is some things that I think would be different if these two teams match up a month from now in the conference finals.
Nikola specifically mentioned that. Like he said, he's like, I know everyone thinks it's this big game. He's like, but you got to understand, like, we're both on back-to-back. It's a regular season game. And he was like, they didn't have Karl-Anthony Towns, and Cat's so good. And like he's like really on defense, and people don't see that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really notable. But the Nuggets did win those non-Jokic minutes, and a big reason was because of the contributions that they got from the young kids. We'll talk about Peyton Watson and Christian Brown and one of the best dunks in Nuggets history on the other side here on Locked On Nuggets. All right, playoffs are here. You're going to have Avs. You're going to have Nuggets. You're going to want to go to those games. The Rockies are playing. You're going to want to go because the stadium is nice, and that's it. But still, you're going to want to go. Concert season is here. The weather's getting nice. You're going to want to go outside. And then if you want to get in all these events, the best way to do it is Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. If you want to get in these Nuggets games, there will be tickets that you can get on Game Time, and you're going to be able to get them the day of the event, even during the playoffs, and you're going to be able to get them at very good prices relative to everywhere else that you're going to find. You're going to find these last-minute deals, flash deals, zone deals, and you're going to be able to see exactly where you're at so you can have the best view that you want for what you're paying. They have a lowest price guarantee. You're going to get the lowest price, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Big mega show today. We got Swipa. We got Adam. I'm here. Kind of. I'm exhausted. I'm 42 years old. These 8 o'clock games are killing me.
I know. It was rough.
I'm dying. I'm getting old. But you know who's not getting old is Peyton Watson and Christian Brown. I have a lot of thoughts on the Christian Brown dunk because there's a lot of commentary about it after the game. But I want to give the floor right now to Peyton Watson's #1 super fan. The biggest fan in the world of Peyton Watson outside of his own mom, Swipa. Swipa! He had so many blocks last night. 6 blocks. It was incredible. It was an absolute Peyton Watson block party. What'd you think?
I think he changes the conversations for the Denver Nuggets defensively for the rest of this run. I think having someone who has the ability to read and react that quickly, almost like a free safety almost. Like, honestly, he moves kind of like Ed Reed did like at his apex when he was just like tracking down Peyton Manning balls. I don't know if you remember, there was a play where he fell off of Kyle Anderson in order to do a contain towards the rim, and then I think Rudy dumped the ball off, and he was able to scramble back to position to get the block on Kyle Anderson. Naz Reid multiple times tried to dribble around him, either with a spin move or with speed, and he could not out-leverage Peyton. And I just think he saved 6 points at least yesterday for the Nuggets, including that last three-pointer, obviously, and then getting the dunk in transition. Peyton Watson, he has a pretty good foul rate in transition as well when he takes it to the rim, and he created a great dunk for Aaron Gordon. And the level of athleticism the Denver Nuggets have between him, Christian Brown, and AG on that bench unit it just really gives them such a dynamic feel and look, and they're so fast and they're so physical and they're so rangy when you have those level of athletes on the court. And I just think Peyton, this is the third time. And again, y'all might remember he played well in both the two Boston games, the one in Boston and then the one in Denver. And I think Peyton has just shown that, like, he had a game versus the Clippers as well. I think it's the first one that they won early this season. They just have, like, he just has a few moments this year versus some really good playoff teams where he's been able to put together some really strong performances. And so I think this is a sign of things to come. He's obviously not a perfect player. He didn't contribute offensively in a great way as a scorer yesterday. He only scored really off a free throw, I believe, and off that dunk. But he just had so much in his bag. And I think the level of defense that he brings to the squad, honestly, like, it just brings so much value to the team. And you could just tell the Minnesota Timberwolves, like, he was changing and altering their shots when they were at the rim. They're making different decisions when he was in their vicinity. So, I mean, it's just a phenomenal, strong game from Peyton Watson.
Adam, we you and I had a show, and we talked about, the implications of Malone leaving Peyton out of the conversation about the playoff rotation. And you were like, I think it was a light of fire under him to be like, hey, your spot is not assured, kiddo. With this game, with the way that they approached this game, with the rotation that they used, do we think now that Peyton Watson is in the playoff rotation?
I mean, I always thought he was, to be honest with you. And look, last night, I think the reason he played 23 minutes was primarily because he played well. I think you replay this game, and if he didn't have that intensity, focus, and execution, if he didn't have that, I don't think he plays 23 minutes. So I think it mirrors how the playoffs will go in terms of Malone is going to give him opportunities to make an impact, and he needs to make the most of those. He still needs to find consistency. But last night, the hope, if you believe in Peyton Watson, the hope is that when you put him alongside more than one starter, meaning if you're not just giving him all bench lineups, his job becomes easier, and he needs to just focus his energy 100% on making impact winning plays. He did that last night. And when he makes impact winning plays and when he's focused on it, he makes more than anyone. And he makes types of plays that very few players in the NBA can make. Like, those block shots were not just, good timing. It was, wow, there's like 3 guys in the NBA that can make that. Wembanyama, Giannis, and Peyton Watson. Like, some of the blocks, recoveries where he just covers so much ground. But here's my take I wanted to get off. It's the only take I had really for the show that I wanted to get. Last time these two teams played, Jaden McDaniels looked like he was a completely different class of defender than Peyton Watson. And that's who you compare him to. Herb Jones, Jaden McDaniels. That's the mold. That's what you look at. And Jaden McDaniels does it more consistently. He's a more veteran player. You should expect that of him. But even watching him in that last game, you thought, yeah, but McDaniels, maybe he's a better class of player, of defender than Peyton Watson. Last night, not at all the case. Peyton Watson was the better and more impactful defensive player. I'm not saying that means he has surpassed him. But when you see him capable of doing that basically in his rookie season, you should be excited because, again, he made plays that I don't think Jaden McDaniels can for how great of a defender he is. He made some of those plays last night. And so if you just told somebody, the Nuggets for the playoffs are adding Herb Jones to their rotation, you'd be like, what? That's a major piece to add to your rotation. Peyton Watson, I'm not saying he'll be that every night. I hope he's that half the nights because that would be more than I would expect. But he has it in him, and that's so encouraging because that is a major impact piece.
Because I'm me. There was actually a play that Peyton made that I thought was bigger than any of the blocks that he made. He grabbed an offensive rebound in traffic and kicked out to Reggie Jackson. That was the Nuggets' first lead of the game. Was off of that
83-80.
That play.
Winning plays.
That was a big play from him. Another big play was Christian Brown obliterating the French rejection, Rudy Gobert, with just a insane switch-handed left dunk. Christian had to field about 15 questions on that dunk last night.
I'll bet he didn't mind that.
It's just really funny about like how we do this when something like this happens. Everyone's got a question like, "What were you thinking? Like, what was like?" And it's really
what was going through your mind?
Yeah, that's what we ask, and I'm always like laughing at it because Christian's like, "I don't know, man. Like, I raised up and I dunked and like I jumped really high and I tried to throw it down and hoped he didn't block it and switched hands because I thought he was going to block it." Aaron Gordon actually had really good like analysis of it though, as the reigning dunk king of the Nuggets. AG was like, you have to have two really. He's like, there's 3 things you got to have there. You have to have the will to challenge, which a lot of guys don't. He said you've got to have the coordination in order to make that switch. He's like getting that left. He's like, he doesn't get that dunk with his right. He's got to get to the left because Rudy's going to block that. And he was like, he understood Rudy's timing. That's the most difficult part. Rudy is so good at timing your shots, and Christian was able to get around it. Christian had a phenomenal game too. 8 points, 4 of 7 from the field. So many dunks, 5 boards for him, a +9 in the box score. Adam, what did you think from Christian Braun last night?
Well, first of all, that dunk, I don't even think it was about timing. Do you know, like in MMA, a spinning backhand? I don't know what you call it. It's like off rhythm, so you don't expect it. It's so absurd. That's what that dunk was. He like jumped like he was going to go right. So Gobert thinks he has timing on it, and then somehow switches midair left hand. There was no timing that up. That was such an insane attempt. That's why it worked. But Christian, I thought, was actually okay for most of this game. Not great, but he had a phenomenal finish to it. And again, if you're the optimist, if you're Calvin Booth, if I could channel my Calvin Booth here, what made Bruce Brown so impactful is he brought that energy and brought chaos into the game defensively, like solid, not taking crazy risks, but he speeds you up. He makes things, there's a snowball effect to it. Peyton Watson was the standout of the two, but at the end, the knockout punch, both of those guys just felt like two velociraptors on the court, just on top of they're already backs against the wall. They're behind. They got to get ahead. And those two guys just seemed like they were everywhere, shutting things down, grabbing rebounds, and getting out in transition. So for Christian Braun, 3 dunks, almost back to back, just from him as a punctuation on this one. And that was, again, the script. If you could write it up, that's the script, is those two guys creating chaos.
How big is it, Matt, that the Denver Nuggets bench, they had 13 rebounds off the bench yesterday?
It's crazy. They were phenomenal, and you could tell that the Wolves were really frustrated with the fact that they were like, these games are really great because they matter more, and so guys are more aware of some of the things. Like Mike Conley kept looking up at the scoreboard whenever like those runs were happening and being like he knew, he was like, we're not getting separation that we need here. Like, you've got to be able to win these minutes, and if you don't, you're just doomed. And the kiddos deserve so much credit for that. Malone was so complimentary of them last night. Like, he was really proud of the effort those guys put in and how they contributed to that win last night. It was really terrific. On the other side, so the Nuggets are probably gonna be the 1 seed. They got to get 2 more wins, or maybe less, depending on what the Thunder and Wolves decide to do to get the 1 seed. Again, the Nuggets have gone over their win total. Again, the Nuggets are considered the best team in the league. Again. So why isn't Michael Malone in consideration for Coach of the Year? We'll talk about that. Plus, I've got some thoughts on Aaron Gordon that I want to get to. We'll talk about that on the other side here on Locked On Nuggets. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to somebody who's unbiased on your life. So today I got to get something off my chest. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week. I've been thinking a lot about how to partition time and about how you can let time run together. And what I mean by that is, like, I have to take time out of my, like, I'm so busy right now, right? I'm writing MVP. I'm tracking magic numbers. I'm doing playoff previews. I'm doing all these things. Like, I have to make time in there to be a dad. Like, I have to make time in there to be a husband. I have to make time in there to be a son and a friend to people. And so trying to manage all that, I think, is really difficult. And it takes an awareness and a self-awareness that is kind of difficult. And that's where I think therapy can really help, is helping you with those kind of things. It's not just about talking about your problems or trauma. Those things are important, but it's also about developing better habits for you. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us here on a Thursday. I think that's the day. Appreciate you guys being with us. We will be back tomorrow. Swipe and grab it with you on Friday, and then we'll have a show for you after the Spurs game to kind of deal with whatever ramifications come out of Friday night's games as far as seeding go. I want to talk about Aaron Gordon real quick before we talk Malone. So AG was questionable to play in this game, and it was really like, it was last minute. Malone said he was like, it was right up until the end, dealing with that foot strain that he's having problems with. Saw AG in the locker room and talked to him. I will just tell you, do not expect him to play versus San Antonio or Memphis. I think he's done for the regular season. He not only has the foot thing, his entire shoulder was in a wrap. He had ice on his hip. That man is extremely banged up. We asked him like, how you doing physically? Jake Spiro asked that. And he said, he paused. He was like, let's go with fine. Let's just say fine. Is that okay? Like, we'll just say that and we'll try and believe it. And I was like, how much are you looking forward to the 5 days off? He's like, you have no idea. And then I asked him, I was like, what does 3 days off do for you? He's like, it's unbelievable. He's like, this is one of the things the media really doesn't have any way to understand is with the players, because we do play every other day for a month. If you just give me 3 days off, it's night and day. What I mean,
he just had 3 days off.
I know, but I think he really does need like 5 full. Like, I think he's so bad. He actually has injuries. So he's going to have to get through this. And everybody's banged up. Like Joker said that. He's like, if you're at this point in this, Joker was funny. He was like, if you're at this point in the season and you're not hurting, either you haven't played or you haven't played the right way. And I was like, okay. But I do think Aaron needs the full 9 days off before the playoffs start. So just kind of as an update, like I thought Aaron was actually phenomenal yesterday. He had 9 assists. His passes, his reads off of the way that the Wolves tried to approach the defense. And he was funny because he was like, yeah, they tried some different stuff. They got a lot of stuff to figure out. That was like what he said about the Wolves. He was really in awe of Nikola yesterday too. The Nuggets have a lot of respect for Minnesota. And I think that's one of the reasons they were so high on what Nikola did. But look, the Nuggets are the 1 seed and they're going to finish with the 1 seed. There's almost no way that they lose San Antonio and Memphis because I think Jokic plays in both. So Adam, you got a question about what this means for a certain coach of the Nuggets?
Every year, I don't understand why Malone isn't in coach of the year. And this is funny because we have this. If you recall, back in 2019, I know you remember this, Swipa. Jokic, I believe, was 2019, finished 3rd or 4th in MVP voting. And it was a big deal. He didn't really have a chance of winning it, but it was a big deal that he was mentioned and laid the groundwork for future MVPs. With Michael Malone, he's never in this conversation, ever. And here's some milestones. They are on pace currently and probably and likely to, knock on wood, have the best single season record in franchise history. They are top 8 in offense and defense, despite having 0 all defensive players on their roster. They have 1 all-star. It's Nikola Jokic. There's no 6th man of the year candidate. Executive of the year, we're not seeing Calvin Booth talked about. So I look at this and I go, they're doing all of this stuff. They're the reigning NBA champs. They're the number 1 seed. Look at all these different things. They're playing 2 guys that have under 3,000 career minutes in it. They're playing them key rotation minutes to get here. All of those things, and he's not even in top 6 or 7 in, like in the conversation for it, never gets mentioned. And I don't know why. I think it's absurd. This award, more than most awards, is narrative based, but Malone has a great narrative. There's a great narrative for all those things I just laid out. So why isn't Michael Malone at least discuss the way Tom Thibodeau's Knicks are, Rick Carlisle's Indiana Pacers somehow are? How is he not in the conversation as those guys?
So currently, even if you look on FanDuel right now, he's not top 5, and Rick Carlisle is currently listed at 5th with a plus 21,000. So,
which is just token 5th, but at least he's token 5th.
Right. Michael Malone is going to be one of the few coaches that suffers in his career from coaching one of the greatest players of all time. He just is going to be in that mark. And I think for a lot of people, this goes to speak how some people feel about, Jamal and the starting lineup. And they just kind of say, well, they've been mostly intact. Jamal Murray missed 23 games this year. And, think about what the Nuggets record could be if he played. I think they're, if I remember correctly, Matt, I think they're 42-13 this year when Jamal Murray plays with Joker so far this season, which is like a 76% win percentage, which is good for 62, 63 wins. So they have been absolutely dynamite over the course of the season. I just think that Malone doesn't get the just due of a fancier market coach, or even, Spo's number 1, for instance. But I think Spo kind of has the assumption you just know he's the best coach in the world. Pop has the 5 titles. I think just that he doesn't exist in a market that has a glamorized head coach position, so therefore it's just not going to be talked about. Like the Kings last year, nobody expected them to do it. Mike Brown got it unanimously. This year, Mark going to get it. I think more than likely going to get it.
Can't we change it though, Swipe? I get it, but can't we Do we have to just go by how we traditionally did this if it's so obvious that traditionally we're just doing a mea culpa? Oh, I didn't know the Thunder were good and they are coach of the year. Can't we like grow in our analysis?
I mean, most of the other awards I think have grown in certain ways. There's still frustrations and I think regressions in a lot of these areas. I think one of the things that's interesting is if you look at it, it's not really a narrative award. And I think it's pretty complicated because you can't be like, well, it's a big market. It's like Tom Thibodeau won. No, like Mike Brown won in Sacramento last year, right? Like Dwayne Casey won in Toronto, and Mike Budenholzer won his first one in Atlanta. It can't be the great player thing either because Popovich has won multiple with Tim Duncan. Scott Brooks won with Kevin Durant. Steve Kerr won with Steph Curry. And Budenholzer won with Giannis. Monty Williams won with CP3 and Booker, and those are not Jokic's level, but still. They also, by the way, like a lot of these is like, hey, did you win 60 games? Then you usually win Coach of the Year. It's another reason why, honestly, like I am kind of like, man, I don't know. Like I don't think Joe Mazzulla is a great coach in the playoffs, but probably could throw him a bone for winning 65 games in the regular season. With Malone, I honestly think it's more of the pathway, and that's the problem. Is like. He didn't win in 2018 because they didn't make the playoffs. And then in 2019, they jumped and they made the playoffs, but the Bucks won 60 that year. And so it was like, okay, that maybe Malone would have gotten more consideration that year.
But he wasn't, at least I don't even think he was in the conversation though, Matt. I don't remember him being third.
And that's the thing is like there was this like, oh yeah, the Nuggets are good. Well, we'll see. And then they went back and they were good again, but then the bubble happened. And then the bubble happened and that changed it because it's like, oh, hey, the Nuggets can like win in the playoffs. And then everyone forgot that 3 years later, but that's another point entirely. There just hasn't been ever like this moment of like real swell, but I totally agree. I think it's absolutely insane to me that if you look back, like I've kind of tried to argue this, there's nothing that where odds should ever factor to award consideration. Like it's important that we not be influenced by because that also you have to understand how sports books set those lines if you're going to do that. And most people don't have time to do that. But the one that I think is important is how did you perform versus your win total? Like this is what the market, the consensus, the wisdom of crowds, they said, this is your number. If it's too low, guess what? It's going to get bet up. If it's too high, guess what? It's going to be bet down because people are going to be like, no, we don't think they're that good. That's the expectation. That is the best way to indicate an actual expectation for what a team should do. It's not like what pundits or analysts or fanalists or anybody else thinks. The best one is honestly, what's this number say about how many games you're supposed to win? Malone's gone over it every single year. He's outperformed it every year. That to me is no matter how high you get that bar, they are better. And Nikola, I think, does take up most of the oxygen in the room, which is like, this was actually mentioned yesterday on Nerder She Wrote on the Athletic show, where it was like, is it really like Seth Partnow was talking about how he was talking with somebody in the league and he was like, yeah, Denver runs all this great stuff. And the guy was like, do they run all this great stuff? Or does Jokic just make the play? I did it. Does Jokic just make the play? Does Jokic just make the play? And then we say it's great coaching. And I do think that it fundamentally fails to understand what coaching in the NBA is, where X's and O's is like this really tiny sliver of how much you have to do. It winds up deciding a lot of how many games you win, because if you're not good at it, you're probably going to lose a lot.
Well, Matt, there's two sides to that. Just to follow up there, because Mike Brown won Coach of the Year with LeBron in 2009, but then Ty Lue didn't get the Laker job in part because of the narrative that he coached LeBron in the finals. So do you feel like he's kind of fallen on the Ty Lue side? Like most of his coaching career, like his apex, is really just being a beneficiary of the fact that he has an all-time great mind on the court with him?
I think the consensus is that Ty Lue's a better coach than Michael Malone, which is categorically insane. I think
they both have one championship. Like,
I think Ty gets too much credit. I think Ty makes a lot of mistakes.
Well, I understood it before Michael Malone won a championship, just because it's just like with players, you kind of get this benefit of the doubt of, hey, they were there and they did it. But Michael Malone won one last year. In fact, if I recall, they went 16-4 en route to winning one when nobody picked them. Everybody thought, oh, they don't want the Lakers in round one. Everybody was wrong on that. So to your point, Matt, there should be some residual like thrust he receives from, oh, we were so wrong about this team last year and they outbeat our expectations. So maybe that should carry over. But this is why I think, not that I think you're wrong, man. I think you're right. That's how the vote works. It's a narrative vote. It's expectation. But here's the thing. Narratives can be crafted. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the Nuggets have not had an all-star other than Nikola Jokic, have not really had anybody even in contention for an award. The only one, and I'm not being tongue-in-cheek here and trying to toot my own horn or any of this stuff, the only guy who has won an award was Bones Highland, who did a very good job of putting himself out there and promoting himself. He's very good at like, hey, let me try to craft this narrative. I think that there is the media that votes on these things, they're storytellers at heart. That is their job. That's their expertise. That's who they are. They sometimes need a story that they can be sold on. And there's a great one for Michael Malone, but nobody seems to have latched on to that. And I even think the Nuggets themselves have done a bad job of telling that story, but there's a great one that they're the reigning champs. What did Austin Rivers say, by the way, like a year ago on his podcast? Everyone F's with Mike, meaning everybody loves Michael Malone. All the players on the team love him. You know how hard that is to do for a team 8 years in a row, 9 years in a row? Almost always a coach expires over time. Everybody seems to like Malone. There's no infighting. They have a great culture. Yes, it's not all him, but it's also not him. And that's an easy story to tell that should get him more recognition.
Yeah, and I think honestly, a lot of this too is, as I always return to, teams take on the identity of their best player. Jokic doesn't want to promote, and so the team doesn't promote. And that's not just the players, that's PR, that's the front office, that's the coaching staff.
Yeah.
Like they just don't promote. And that's like one of the things is if Joker came out and was like, why isn't Michael Malone coach of the year?
Yeah.
Then guess what? That would be the first time that Jokic has ever made a headline.
It's so true.
But
and you're right that Jokic the only one great enough that he doesn't need to campaign. So he doesn't get hurt from this like ethos that he set, or this culture he set, yet everybody else does, because everyone else needs campaigning.
So y'all don't think that the Denver Nuggets will put a Brate shirt out with all the players on for social media and all that before the game?
I'm not even trying to put this on the Nuggets like their organization should have done something, because I don't think they can. I think it's more what Matt's saying. There's a culture of we're not gonna, we're gonna keep everything tight and walled off, when it's like sometimes you can put your guy out. I remember this with Aaron Gordon more than anything. They wanted him to be an all-star. He wanted to be an all-star, and he refused every interview that was offered to him. And you're thinking, just go out in front of a camera and say, I want to be an all-star. Create a headline, create a conversation. Otherwise, nobody's thinking about you unless you tell them to think about you.
I think it's very telling that there continues to be like no consideration for any of these players for awards. Malone's not that. They still are kind of like, well, okay, they won last year, but like, really, they're going to give it Jokic the MVP again? Like, I can't believe, like, I don't know how many they have to win. I don't know what they have to, like, I will say this, I am in awe of this. I thought the title would change everything, and I overestimated that, because
it's changed a lot.
All it took was 8 months for them to forget, though. And now the Nuggets are going to have to remind everybody again, which is exactly what they look ready to do. That's got to do it for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. Catch Swipe after every game on Swipe Cam on YouTube. Catch the DNVR post-game show after every Nuggets game. We will be back with you tomorrow. Swipe and Gripe. We will preview the Nuggets weekend set versus two teams that have no interest in winning and who's going to play, who's not. Plus, we'll track the path. Guess what? We're going to talk about the bracket tomorrow. Buckle up, because the Nuggets are the best team in the West, and they might just smash everybody, but boy, is the bracket looking tough. We'll talk about that tomorrow on the show. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.